What is going on, guys? AlgorithmicJason here with the day 3 of the JavaScript 30 by West Boss, and let's dive into it. Same as always, the link will be in the description down below. So let's check out what we have today. I'll show you the final product here on the left. So you got this blur on this picture down here. You can take it up a notch, have a blur, or bring it down. We got the spacing, we got the base color. As you can tell, it changes this JavaScript up here and the padding around it. How did we do this and what did we start off with? Let me show you what we started off with by doing a get checkout through. I have changes, so we get add it and get checkout master, and this is what we had. We had it empty, so we still have the inputs there, but they're just not doing anything. And this is JavaScript, changed any colors. Okay, let's jump into the code. So if we look at HTML here, we see that we have a div which contains label and input pairs. For the first one is the spacing right here. Then we have the blur and the base color. So spacing, blur, base. That already came with it. The next thing that we did was to learn about, basically this day 3 was learning about variables in CSS variables. The first thing we did was we did a selector of root, meaning the whole HTML itself. So we targeted with the -- base. What this is a variable, and then we have the value on the right side of it. So it's the same thing, kind of like in just basic CSS. Here we have the for the property, yeah. So we have the property there, but instead we're making a variable up here, and then we have the spacing variable and the blur variable. We set the values to 10 pixels, and we set this one to white. After that, we selected the image, so the only image that we have, and we gave it the padding of this variable that we created, and we use that, as you can tell, with var parentheses and the double hyphen spacing. So it's the same thing, saying 10 pixels. And same thing up here, and same thing here. We did blur, variable blur. That's basically what we did, I guess, statically. So that's what it starts off with. But as a user, you want to be able to control these things, and that's where the JavaScript comes in. This here is just the class highlighter, that's what it stands for. And that targets this JavaScript as well as the padding around the image. So I'm going to come down here to the script tag, and this is where the JavaScript comes in. And yes, there's a lot of consoles and debuggers. I was having a problem, but I did figure it out. So first thing I want to point out is I target all the inputs by doing a query selector off for that div, and then within that div, all the inputs. So we targeted all the inputs. The next thing is, for each of those inputs, we're going to label it an input, and then we're going to add an event listener to it. And you don't need to. That's just something that we did and they both work. So we have an event listener for a change. So we change here, it's gonna listen. And we have an event listener for a mouse move. So we go ahead and just comment this out. We have a mouse move, so it's gonna also update it the same way. That's just the fun that we can do, fun things that we can do, switch it up a little bit. But anyways, we're going to call the function update inputs, which is we can see up here. The first thing that we do is create a variable called suffix, and then we target the event dataset.sizing. And so we learned about data attributes on day 1, I believe, maybe day 2. I think it was day 1. Learn about data attributes, and we're using them here. And this data set is basically how you target the data attributes. So I'll show you in the HTML here. We have the data sizing attribute. And so to target any data attributes in our HTML, we can just put dot data set, and it's going to target all of them. And then after that, you can be more specific. So this specific one is just the sizing. We don't have to include the data or the hyphen. So it's just the sizing, and that's why we use the dataset.sizing. And basically what we're doing here is creating, as you can tell here in the HTML, or sorry, in the CSS, we need pixels for spacing. We need pixels for blur. We do not need pixels for the base though. So we're creating the suffix of pixels. As you can tell here, it's just px. And so basically what this does is if it requires a pixel, it's going to include the pixel. That's what this is. If it doesn't require the pixel, it's gonna, this is the or sign, and then it's nothing, so empty parentheses. So the base color doesn't need the pixel after that. That's why we have that line there. And then we're gonna use it down here when we do document.element.style.setProperty. This is a mouthful, and I've never ran into this before, so I had to look it up a little bit. But so the dot set property, you're setting a property in the first argument that it's going to take is the property name. So you want to set the new property name. And then after that is, and it's actually optional, it's value. So if you don't put anything, it's going to be an empty string. And then you have the priority as the third argument, and it's also optional. And that's where you can include the important need be. So basically what we're doing here, we put backticks to use interpolation. So here we're doing the hyphen, and that's what we need to use to target the CSS variable. And that's when we're using the this dot name. So whatever the event listener event is dot name. So if we're changing, for example, spacing, we're going to target that name, the blur that name, and the hyphen. Of course, you need that, and then you're going to include the comma, and then you're going to include the dot value, which is the new value that it's become after the event listener, after the change. And then after that, you're going to include the suffix, whether it's the color. It's not going to be nothing for a suffix, or the suffix will be the pixels, so the px. And that is basically what we learned for day 3. Very fun project here. And I guess I do want to point out that I did have trouble wrapping my head around the set property. I was so confused for a while, and this was actually my first time learning the CSS variables. So what I was doing interpolation, but I was so confused that I was doing the hyphen hyphen within the interpolation, and I was getting nan, which is not a number, and it kept throwing errors. Like, what am I doing wrong? But I finally realized that within this backticks, the hyphens need to be before the interpolation. And that was a very fun project. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd love to answer any questions that you guys have. And until next time, tomorrow, day 4. Peace. AlgorithmicJason again.